everyone. It is 12 o'clock. So as people are coming in, we're going to get started. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Dr. Jessica Stansberry. I am the Director for Teaching and Learning Excellence with the Center for Excellence in Learning, Teaching, and Technology with the University of Baltimore. I'd like to take a moment and thank our collaborators in this series, which is Johns Hopkins University, our Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation with the University of Baltimore, as well as UMBC. And with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker, Dr. Nick Potkalitsky, and tell you who he is. So he is the founder and CEO of Pragmatic AI Solutions and author of AI in Education, a roadmap for a teacher-led transformation. He has over 20 years of teaching experience. He is a scholar of media, communications, and rhetoric. He is an author and editor of the Substack Educating AI and the LinkedIn newsletter Pragmatic AI Educator. And he's an impactful keynote speaker and innovative instructional designer. Nick specializes in AI training for K through 16 educators and is the creator of Pragmatic AI online courses. He is open for consultations, and he partners with school districts and companies to develop customized AI implementation strategies that align with the unique goals and needs of your institution. We are really excited to have him today, and I don't want to take away any more of his time. So with that, Nick, the floor is yours.
So I just want to let people know from the outset that my answers are deeply contextualized within my own experience as a writing teacher. And I currently teach in the secondary arena, and I also teach first-year writing classes. So the AI project of integration and implementation is still very much developmental and experimental. So the answers I'm offering today are just in the very beginning stages. So I hope you enjoy this presentation, and I look forward to your questions in the chat and our discussion after. So my name is Nick Potkalitsky. I am an educator with 20 years of experience. So I started out as a high school Latin teacher, teaching Latin and Greek in the Cleveland area. And I've really traveled throughout the great state of Ohio, teaching in various venues to various demographics. I've taught middle school, high school, and college. And I got a PhD in rhetoric and narrative studies from the Ohio State University. And I am unapologetically a humanist, and I work with AI through a rhetorical lens. So at the same time, I've spent the last 3 years deeply engaged in the AI education space, developing several influential frameworks, which I've published in various areas, but you can kind of find a lot of that work consolidated on my Substack, Educating AI. I've worked with numerous schools, universities, and institutions through my consultancy, Pragmatic AI Solutions. And we're pragmatically oriented to the extent that we view that AI is very much already in the hands of our students, and they're using it regardless of what sort of measures we're taking in our classrooms to prohibit or surveil its use. So it's our challenge as educators to figure out a way to coexist with these new tools. And I'm finding that I, as an educator, do that the best when I'm listening closely to student voices. I'm also discovering and have been investigating over the past 2 years how AI can be an opportunity to redeploy longstanding powerhouses of pedagogical theory in new contexts. And I'll walk you through some of those discoveries today. The slides are not cooperating. Technology. All right. So AI tools not only impact the way we write, but they're also impacting the way that we think. Most AI policies and literacy programs right now are still focused on the AI plagiarism dilemma, and it's a big dilemma, and it deserves our attention still. But since the beginning of 2025, I've increasingly framed my work around a concept that my colleague Nigel Daly developed called the cognitive bleed of AI. So he defines the cognitive bleed as a bidirectional exchange of thought and creativity mediated by language uh, between humans and AI, which can either enhance human cognition through productive collaboration or diminish it through over-reliance. So student AI usage statistics vary widely depending upon the source, but we have over the past 3 years seen a gradual uptick. And just last week, I read a study that uh, uh, sort of announced that over 50% of high school students are using AI several times a week to complete homework. So in this context, AI is shaping the way students are thinking about problem solving, content knowledge, and the very nature of school. Initial research studies are showing a complex relationship emerging between AI use and perceptions of critical thinking. What we have here, and what I'm proposing in this talk, is that we have an opportunity. What if we brought the best of what we know about the science of learning to bear on students' engagement with AI? Could we possibly develop strategies that help them maximize critical thinking when working with and around these tools? So over the past several months, we've seen several important studies come out about AI's impact upon critical thinking. So in this talk, I will be focusing on one particular study completed by Nicholas Spatula in 2024 that suggests a complex rather than simple causal relationship between AI and critical thinking. Spatula's findings are threefold. Overall, interaction with AI leads to heightened trust in these tools, information generation, and reports of decreased critical thinking. And this was just recently uh, backed up by a large study by Microsoft focusing on the work habits of knowledge workers. Yet and this was the interesting finding that Spatula had, when AI chatbots explain their reasoning processes, users report increased levels of critical thinking. The complication that Spatula notes is that explanations of reasoning may over time lead to increased confidence in AI's ability, resulting in additional decreases of critical thinking. So the major insight here for teachers and educators is that the shape of the prompt cycle and the AI interaction matter. Here I cite the work of Eric Lars Martensen, who makes a distinction between transactional and conversational prompt cycles, where a transactional exchange focuses on simple input-output and efficiency usage, and a conversational exchange is more nuanced, focusing on the boosting of critical thinking. So, and I'll be publishing his piece on my Substack tomorrow, so I'm excited about that. So for folks who want to dive in a little bit deeper into this emerging literature, I have here on my slide this important distinction between reliance and over-reliance. I'm not sure whether this terminology is actually going to be the best in the long term, but it's kind of what we have right now. It's notable that reliance versus over-reliance is a crucial distinction, but it's also extremely porous at its intersection. I've created this chart so that people can start to think about what different prompt cycles look like in terms of reliance versus over-reliance. Here I have located in particular on the reliance side students' ability to recognize errors in AI output as sort of an absolutely crucial aspect. So as anyone who has worked through prompt cycles with students, that they oftentimes bring a limited knowledge set about the content they're inquiring about. So in my classes, we've actually taken to using sort of like an adversarial AI network, pushing AI content through other AIs in order to test out the accuracy and efficiency. This is by no means a 100% guaranteed exercise, but it does help students sort of gain or build sort of a awareness or a criticality about AI outputs. So this is incredibly important as AI is rapidly becoming students' #1 research tool. So, and I would advocate strongly for AI source interrogation techniques being integrated into our research writing curricula. So AI's disruption is forcing us to deeply re-engage with core questions about education. How do students learn? What is critical thinking? What should be included in writing classes? What constitutes expertise in this now AI-infused world? So as I have personally and professionally sought out answers to these questions, I've turned back to several pedagogical powerhouses, as I'm calling them. So one of these powerhouses is generative learning theory, devised by Merlin C. Wittrock in the 1970s. It's a constructivist theory informed by then emerging discoveries in psychology, in particular memory studies. The foundational insight is that students learn only when they can introduce new ideas into their memory. This process is a complex function of attention, motivation, knowledge and preconceptions, and most importantly, generation. Our question in this new AI context is it possible to design in-class AI interactions that help students build new knowledge? My second powerhouse is cognitive load theory. According to CTL, there are three main types of cognitive load: intrinsic, extraneous, and germane. Intrinsic and germane together form a golden highway towards deeper understanding. The flow states associated with intrinsic cognition over time lead to lasting changes in cognitive engagement and understanding. Unfortunately, much of the day in and day out realities of school sit firmly in the realm of extraneous cognition. Extraneous cognition is where intrinsic cognition is converted into efficiency-oriented processes. Here, our big thought is, what if students had more control over the learning and assessment process? How might such a change address or redirect the learning disruptions of extraneous cognition? And I might add unscaffolded AI prompt cycles. So several decades after Wittrock's foundational work, Mayer redevised or reworked his basic schema about generative learning and expanded it in the form of the SOI theory of learning. The select, organize, integrate framework is highly influential. It probably has influenced your pedagogical practice, even if you are not aware of it. So according to the SOI framework, students select incoming information, then organize it into coherent representations, and finally integrate it into existing knowledge. So when students are actively engaged in the learning process in this way, we see increased transfer, deeper memory, and more meaningful learning. So our big question at this point is, In what ways do students work through the SOI process when engaged in different kinds of prompt cycles? More recently, Fiorella and Mayer joined forces to use the SOI framework to develop 8 generative learning strategies. So these strategies are probably mainstays in your own classroom that you use to help students translate information into deeper meaning and understanding. So I know when I was getting my teaching license, we were taught all about mapping, concept mapping, just as ways to push students to interact with sort of more static information, help them work out and think through different relationships, and build new connections literally in their brain. So questions at this juncture include, in what ways can we use these strategies in an AI responsive classroom? How might we interrupt the efficiency orientation of corporate designed AI tools through these strategies? And how can we more generally open up spaces for deeper engagement and long-term learning in any educational situation? Which I think is what we all want to see happen. So my last element of sort of the tour day pedagogy. Let's see, my slides are deeply uncooperative today. There we go. So in my recent trainings, I've moved to reconceptualize AI literacy, particularly in light of many of my rediscoveries in pedagogy, to describe it now as possibility literacy, to connect the work students are doing with AI to a much broader range of pre-existing skill sets and competencies. So in my AI responsive classrooms, so we actively study patterns, meaningful or random, and much of the excitement is trying to determine what is meaningful and what is random. Who gets to determine those categories? We examine divergences from patterns in order to understand change, decline, and transformation. We write and create new meaning by synthesizing the old with the new. We reflect on our practices and refine our practices in light of our reflections, and we govern collaboratively, considering the needs of the whole community when making important decisions. And in my AI trainings, I map that in sort of a micro way down to working with AI tools, to a sort of a teacher's practice in developing curriculum, to maintaining a classroom environment, all the way up to a more systemic approach, focusing on possibility. So people have been responding to it, kind of like the shift out of the sole focus on AI. So now in this second part, I'm going to talk specifically about one class that I've been working on with a research partner, Terry Underwood from Sacramento State. So this is a class that is a smaller group of students, and we are designing it expressly to suffuse all aspects of the class with generative learning strategies. So in our first assignment, students are writing an autobiographical sketch about their history and experience with technology. And our goal here is to shift from, the classic teacher-assigned essay to a more authentic writing experience, as they're going to be publishing these pieces to a small community that they're sort of self-selecting at the end of our unit. So the second assignment is more ambitious in scope. Students are going to pair up and then do group writing focused on developing recommendations and curricula for our school's ongoing AI adoption plan. So in my class, we have no top-down AI restrictions. Our AI usage is all negotiated between teacher and student. Students have access to a full slate of FERPA-protected AI tools courtesy of Boodlebox. The personal nature of the first assignment, the autobiographical sketch, has most students writing their first drafts largely without AI assistance, although we are seeing sort of an uptick in AI usage as they're sculpting their what in their original format are sounding a lot more like essays, and they're kind of using AI to help tease those materials and shape them into creative nonfiction mode. So it's an interesting sort of dialogical movement to watch unfold. So our second assignment will be an opportunity for even further immersion in this, I guess, somewhat amorphous concept of AI composition. The students will engage in prompting workshops and will be leading the prompting workshops. And we're going to be doing some prompt transcript analysis. And hopefully one of those sessions will be led by my friend and co-author, Mike Kentz. So generative learning strategies proceed along three different channels, non-AI, AI, and then more of a hybrid channel. So students keep an AI log in the class. So they're not only copying and pasting their prompt cycles, but they're being asked in pointed ways to summarize, map, self-examine, and self-explain in response to their AI usage and other assignments in class. In terms of AI usage, Terry has been creating these pretty incredible AI mentor prompts that guide students through different technical aspects of creative nonfiction. And inside those prompting experiences, students are asked to summarize and imagine and enact. And then we have hybrid spaces where, for instance, our students are generating their learning standards or outcomes for their final writing assignment. And they did all of that first without AI, and then they used AI to help them systematize their language, particularly as they were creating different sort of levels for the standards. And then, of course, they came back and tore the initial drafts apart and made those rubrics their own. So students did self-testing and self-explaining, and then they had to teach me how to use this rubric on their writing. So the theory here in this class, and it is a heck of a lot of work to get all of those different channels up and running, but the theory here is that students need to be actively engaged through multiple instructional pathways in order to generate new knowledge about working with these complex systems. So just feels like the old assign an essay and have them write an essay on a topic just is not really suited for the world we're living in anymore. All right. So I've created here a little bit of a deeper dive so folks can see how these different generative learning strategies are refracting across AI-assisted and non-AI assisted use. So one that Terry and I were really particular about was this need for students to explain their rationale behind choices. And I know this was very big, and when we first saw AI responsive teachers talking about process pedagogy. And, we've kind of confirmed that in our own research that students actively need to be taught how to write about their rationales, because that's not necessarily a skill that they have. And so we've done different demonstrations and workshops on that, and just different talk sessions. But now that we kind of have it up and humming, I think we're getting a lot of like metacognitive bang out of these reflective spaces. Otherwise, your traditional high school student is just going to kind of put down the bare minimum in reflective spaces. We did like serendipitously see something interesting happen when students were creating their assessment outcomes. They added on a explanation of rationale behind AI usage in their writing standard in order to receive highest marks. So that was sort of unprompted. So that was a kind of cool moment. Once again, I'm working with pretty amazing kids, so I know this is a very uh, what I'm doing is very particular to my environment and possibly not transferable to others. So, but I'm very excited about sharing out what my students are able to accomplish. All right. So one thing that Terry and I have been grappling with is the efficiency-driven classroom. And Mike and I do a bit of writing about this in our book. So, I mean, we all know it if we've existed inside a classroom in the past 20 or 30 years. So there's just such an emphasis on getting things done, on producing products. Efficiency-oriented frameworks are just seem to be fundamentally woven into the fabric of our educational institutions. But it's my argument here that we teachers always have a little bit of room to open up spaces for flow states and active learning. So as a writing instructor, um, when I'm identifying markers of an efficiency-driven classroom, and I'm definitely guilty of this myself, I I have in the past emphasized, output over process. Um, I have taught students to view text as an information delivery system as opposed to a communicative exchange. I have focused, particularly in my grading and weighting, more on the final essay and than on process. And I have given students a very limited role in uh, determining the nature of assignments and outcomes and grading processes. So, and I think I'm getting better at this last one, but I certainly have sent most of the writing out the door to be done uh, outside of class. So, and I think this is in particular one that we have to think about as writing teachers. So these combined attributes, I consider them to be sort of a perfect storm for AI disruption. So we see now students using AI tools to deliver content back to teachers in the most efficient manner possible in order to maximize grading outcomes. But our questions here, and these are the questions that Terry and I are just asking in our class, don't necessarily have the answers. So what if students had more control of the writing process and assessment process? What if writing was reframed as the creation of meaning and not content? And what if students were asked to analyze the complex processes through which these new technological systems can either enhance meaningful understanding or simply generate more content without depth? So that's kind of where we are at in our class right now, actively having those conversations. So a few more particulars about our class, just to show how special a case this actually is. So we have a very small sample size of 10 students who have varying experiences with AI. Many of them have already been taking year-long English classes with me and have received some introductory AI literacy units in that class. And we actually read Ethan Mollick's Co-Intelligence over the summer, just as part of a larger focus on monsters, machines, and mammals is the theme of my senior English class. But in this special half-year course, Terry and I are actively trying to counteract the efficiency-driven structures of today's classroom and picking up where unscaffolded AI prompting has left off for our students. So our core foundations in the class have been building trust and rapport, and that's a hard thing to do, particularly when I'm kind of teaching in a school where students don't necessarily know what the AI policy is going to be from one class to another. We have valued student process by engaging in a detailed manner with their reflections. We've allowed students space to reflect on the class process and to give us input, and we've responded to that input. And this is much more in Terry's domain, but we're reimagining writing as a writing situation, and we're helping each student find their semantic vision. So we're having some initial breakthroughs, and so like we've done initial goes at concepts like theme, audience, and emotional resonance. And then after Terry has kind of worked them through his curriculum on writing situation and semantic vision, what we're sort of seeing is these concepts kind of break out of the shell of like the prepackaged essay. And here I get a little bit poetic, but they kind of start to shine in their original rhetorical complexity and instability. We recently read a short piece by Thomas Merton, this beautiful piece where he's reflecting on his time in the woods, and he's observing a sack plane flying over, carrying these planes that carried nuclear bombs, and he's getting into this like deep narrative, almost mystical meditation. And students were reading this piece, and they were thinking about their more essaic kind of writing. And one student just had this amazing observation just about how, this writer's more public writing situation allowed him to perhaps kind of just go deeper into his theme, and sort of access this personal sense of meaning and communicate that truth in a way that this particular writer felt like, at least the way that she was kind of packaging her text, she was going to kind of strive for in later drafts. So it was a pretty amazing moment. So yeah, what we're kind of doing in this class, we're sort of rediscovering writing, pushing students to write in a more authentic way, and helping them find audiences for their pieces. So we had one student say, in light of our work, that there's a real value to the human shaping of the text. And I'm seeing students near the end of their autobiographical sketch, this particular unit, so they have a certain possessiveness over their narrative, even in the face of AI's efficiencies. So what we're sort of seeing here in a very small context, and it's by no means, a something to sort of build an entire systemic approach on, but I think what we're discovering in this little venue is that by giving students license to use AI and to really discover its strengths and weaknesses, they can, with proper guidance, develop their own boundaries of usage. So I think that's an important thing to discover. Um, Maria Montessori talks about the potentiality of the child. I have a little bit of a Montessorian in me, so if you can't tell. All right. So I want to give Terry some real high praise for his work on these AI mentor prompts. So I know a lot of people are developing these more inquiry-based tutorial kind of prompts, and a lot of them are very, very static. But Terry has done an amazing job, and we're hoping to publish on our results over the summer and share out these prompts. I've shared a sort of a parallel prompt on these slides, so you guys can take one of them for a ride if you want. This one's for my research class, and it walks students through the process of toggling through different modes of expression for their final projects and then creating different outcomes. And I've created in a way that it sort of pushes students towards higher thinking tasks. And by the end of that process, they get rough drafts, and then I sort of help them center those more through human feedback. But we're sort of finding in these inquiry-based prompting cycles that the educator can redirect AI's generative functionalities to activate students' generative writing capabilities. Terry writes them in a way so that we ask students to kind of pause and step aside and do writing on a separate Google Doc, and kind of do a sort of a toggle back and forth between the prompt cycle and creation of a larger writing piece. We always run these when a teacher is in the room, so questions can come up and we can kind of troubleshoot things. And our students are actually very excited about learning how to build these prompts. So they keep asking me almost every day, when are we going to learn how to build them? And we're actually going to build them as part of our research project when we start to investigate different strategies for implementing AI in a broader way in our school community. Just so you know that we've built and tested these prompts on Claude. We're having our best results with Claude. So if you want to try ours, go ahead and give it a spin on Claude. So what we're finding in this process is that AI is a powerful and disruptive tool, and yet teachers and designers, we as teachers and designers retain some influence over how it shapes our critical thinking process. So I've heard a number of people kind of talking about the need for more design education as part of AI literacy. So the quicker our students see that they have the power to shape AI prompt cycles and are not passive recipients to the output, I think the better position that they're going to be in as consumers of these tools. All right, so I'm going to wrap up here because I know I've gone a little long. But implications for the future. So this is based not only on my class, but just on my broader work. So we're seeing students, particularly in the high school arena, using AI. More students using it each year. AI is impacting the way they learn and interact with the world. And I think, and hopefully I've given you a little bit of confidence that we as educators can reframe these encounters in terms of generative learning or other long-standing instructional pedagogies. So we have state policies in the secondary arena already paving the way towards broader AI literacy efforts. Pat Young Pradit from Teach AI and Code.org just put out a post a couple days ago, and he had a whole series, like 10 different states who are rolling out different literacy programs right now. So what was, K through 12 was pretty sleepy there for about a year or two, but it seems to be waking up in terms of people trying to get a handle on what's going on, how to take some proactive steps. So initial goals, we need to develop frameworks that redeploy the science of learning to address these tools' evolving impact on critical thinking. And more broadly, so our goal could be, if we're brave, to create curriculum and instructional strategies that activate student agency and ownership over their learning process with these tools. So, what Terry and I are showing here is just one possibility of how this can work. And I just wanted to plug Jane Rosenwig's in her Substack, The Important Work, if you want to read. Stuff seems to be coming out every couple days about experiments from other educators like myself. So skip this last slide. So if you're interested in getting into the book, take a look. We believe teachers are going to be the real movers and shakers over the next couple of years, making the change happen. So, and feel free to reach out if you need any help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. This was a wonderful presentation, and we're excited to go into some questions. So first, I'm going to start with one that was in the chat. Feel free to use the Q&A feature as well. I'm going to ask, this is from, okay, here we go. What do students report about using AI to help them with creative nonfiction schemas? Why do they say this helps them, and does it improve their creative work?
I see with students that it's very very depending upon students' sort of preconceptions about what AI is. So I've had one student who in my just general English class and there's a number of students who probably fit in this category who see AI as being trained on stolen materials and very much do not want to let it anywhere near their creative process. So, and it's not my role as a teacher to sort of intrude on those strong ethical claims, but simply to have a conversation. And we've brought in articles to sort of examine copyright issues. And, by and large, I always include sort of an opt-out provision in any of my assignments. So I have had students, it's sort of like a percentage game in terms of there's only a certain amount that the student would want to give over, maybe just in terms of one passage where there was more of a stylistic component where she was having difficulty oscillating between the narrating I and the narrated I, and she was able to kind of get a creative jump start by seeing some alternative versions of that. But they tend to feel some creative stagnancy when they kind of have like a one shot prompt that like totally revises the work. And Terry and I, we write about like the autobiographical I as being just such a sensitive terrain when it comes to AI composition. So one of my readers has published that, to do anything with I narration involving AI is a form of lying, and I don't necessarily draw. I think I tend to think in terms of spectrums, but but I think this reader of mine is sort of highlighting, just how private this I expression is, and personal, and there are real sacrifices, I think, that and compromises that come from outsourcing and even getting a creative boost. And it's impressive to see, 17 and 18-year-olds sort of maybe not being able to articulate it at that level, but with that sort of like narrative toolkit, but to feel it sort of emotively and to want to figure it out before necessarily jumping into a prompt cycle. I mean, I think it sort of counteracts like the mythology of the student that is, I mean, the students that's just turning over all their work and trying to do as little as possible. So, granted, there probably are some students out there that fit that template, but by and large, I'm seeing students interact with these tools in a more sophisticated manner 2 years in.
Great, thank you. Another question, can you give an example of a mentor prompt or some mentor prompts?
Yeah, a mentor prompt, we'll be focusing on the different aspects of the writing situation. So, we'll ask them to think about one aspect of a writing situation has to do with norms and conventions that govern a writing situation, and these can be the grading schema within a classroom, or these can be more societal expectations. And we'll create sort of a persona through AI. Sort of it goes back to Ethan Mollick's foundational insight that we get the most out of AI tools when we ask them to play different roles. And so we'll create a role, we'll give it like just a generic name and like code and convention mentor prompt, and then it will go through, it will have a series of questions. Usually we can build them with like 4 or 5 prompt cycles inside of them. So the student will be asked sort of a question, then they'll do some writing on an outside Google Doc, and then they'll get kind of share a summary of what they've discovered, and then they'll get another question. So it forms sort of like a immersive learning situation. One might call it a tutorial sort of situation. And we found that we can build these like 4 or 5 interactions deep before, just the randomization of the AI itself starts to derail, and we kind of don't necessarily have as good results in terms of keeping the AI kind of on script. So we keep it kind of short and sweet. They usually take the students about 10 to 20 minutes or so, and then we kind of come back together and we share. And this kind of goes back to my distinction between, we use AI for search, we use AI for inquiry or assistantship, and we use AI for generation. And, it gets very blurry inside a given prompt cycle, but, at least in the K through 12 arena, I think we're getting the most pedagogical bang for our buck when we're focusing our students on search and inquiry-based uses of AI. Once they start like generating text wholesale pretty early on in the writing process, then we're kind of getting more into extraneous cognition. We're bypassing that intrinsic pathway, and learning isn't, deep critical thinking isn't happening. So I mean, this is like the perennial challenge of our age is we have these tools that are essentially kind of a fire hose in their design. We have three distinct modalities of use, and we as teachers, we have to somehow scaffold their students' engagement with them and also teach them literacy practices, including like deep source integration, so that they can become the best users possible. So, I mean, it's heavy. It's a heavy lift. So, and teachers need a lot of help, I think. So,
So much. Kind of going into continuing that thought, another technology that is a difficult thing for faculty to navigate as well as social media. And we have a question on
yeah.
how are students using AI with their social media? For example, if they're autobiographies, are they putting their Instagram or Twitter feeds into AI? Are they allowing AI to access some of that information?
Yeah, I haven't seen it in my class, but I mean I think the first AI tools most students are using are embedded into social media apps. And I know I'll just point you in the direction of Mark Watkins, who's one of our best AI interrogators out there. He was very early on to, just the whole slew of promotional campaigns aimed at students and all these efficiency-based tools like StudyRot and that sort of are all about just simplifying content and really sort of in some ways I think they do have some potential uses, but there's, as sort of Mark kind of warns us, that as more of this, particularly the process of reading and deeper examination of text is outsourcing, it's definitely an area of great concern. Um, but I think it would be interesting. I mean, students are writing about they're definitely writing about their social media experiences. And we've kind of framed this autobiographical sketch as an opportunity for students to show their expertise in the different epochs of technological change that they have experienced. So, and it's interesting to read their very candid responses in terms and describing their over-reliance on these particular tools. And I think that's sort of a sign that we have them in a place of trust and rapport. Um, but as to, how to potentially bridge the gap between tools we want to bring into universities and schools where we could have more monitoring of use versus where, there's so many different free tools that students already have access to. I mean, I think this is another one of our big conundrums right now. I'm sort of counseling many of my K through 12 people to start bringing in school AI tools at the professorial level and teacher level, and start onboarding that way and begin from there to figure out local practices for classroom engagement, allowing for many different, a range of different possibilities depending upon department use or professorial or instructor uh, objectives. And, my consultancy sort of counsels going slow to go fast, because I think we're sort of seeing in parts of the country right now where, there's a big buy-in has taken place, and no one is very excited about it, and then sort of AI, which is already a pretty fractious topic, becomes even more so, and ultimately, it's students that are going to suffer as a result. So.
Well, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are at our time. But Dr. Potkalitsky, thank you so much for your time. We've had a wonderful hour learning from you. I see on your screen still we have slides and ways to connect. And so I really appreciate you. I'm going to change over and just share my screen really quickly as we wrap up. Thank you so much. We have an exit survey for our participants. You can go to bit.ly/AIP-survey and scan the QR code as well to give us some feedback so that we know what we can do to continue to make this an excellent series. Our next session is going to be on April 9th. It is focusing on the student voice. So we will have student representatives from the University of Baltimore, UMBC, and Johns Hopkins University sharing their experience with generative AI. So we hope to see you at that session as well. You can scan the other QR code to join. And once again, thank you so much, Nick. Any thoughts from our partners as we wrap up? I think we're all set. Well, thank you again. Oh, I see something pop up in the chat. We got, yes, so for our attendees, our registrants, we will be sending an email out with the recording of this session, as well as some resources. So thank you all again so much for your time, and have a wonderful afternoon.